Mr. Roy George, thank you for joining us today and welcome to Mortgage Leadership Dialogues, my executive conversation series hosted by myself, 3N Performance Partners, and Pragma Technologies, talking to leaders across the industry about operational, technical, productivity, AI, modernization issues that are affecting the future of lending. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate being given the opportunity to be on the show, and I'm always happy to share what I think is happening out in the market and what we're doing here at MOR. It's always exciting to talk about it. So yeah, thanks again for having me here.
You're welcome, man. So the thesis that we're chasing in this particular conversation today is really around how aware are leaders about the actual priorities that they have related to modernization and futurifying their tech stack. There is a sense of in the market right now that things are happening so fast and they're changing so fast. There's this fear of missing out going on, and so one of the things we're trying to do with our conversations with guys like yourself is figure out, how has this thing morphed over time and kind of where is the market now, and how are you as a leader thinking about investments that you need to make in order to be future proof, if you will, and take advantage of the market. So thank you for being here, man. And the first question I'll ask you is, I'm not going to tell you how long I've been doing this, but I think you and I are probably neck and neck in terms of experience. I got more gray hair than you. Um, but one of the things, man, is in the last 20 years, as you look back on your career, how would you classify the changes that have been thrust on operators and executives in terms of needing to change? What has been the need to change in order to keep up? Biggest change you've seen in the last 20 years from where operations and technology might have been to where it is today?
Hmm. The biggest change, I think that's a harder question to answer than people would think. There's lots of things that have changed over the last 30 years of my career. I've watched technology come into play over the last 20 years heavily. I remember the first 10 years where it was just there's going to be this technology and we weren't sure where exactly what it was going to look like.
Right.
And I think right around the 2003, 2004 time period for me, I started to see proprietary loan operating systems come into play. I started to see some new tools, nothing major at the time, but then right after trade hit, I
Yep.
started to see a big influx of new technology. And I think that was particularly driven by, the need to accommodate these new guardrails and regulations. So in my opinion, the biggest changeover or the biggest influx of technology came right around the 2012 to 2016 time period. I saw a lot of startups show up. I saw a lot of ingenuity come into play. And the biggest technological difference from the 90s and the early 2000s to what is now 2010s, 2020s is in my opinion, again, um, the ability to complete a loan application, complete a loan transaction digitally, right? Without a human being being involved in the initial phase of the process, which I think, and I personally feel, is the only part that is truly a part of the puzzle that is 100% or can be 100% digital. It's that application or that search to application to registration. That's the part that can truly be digital if you build it digitally. I think everything else comes with nuances that spits out more exceptions than anybody
Interesting.
ever thought they were going to actually see.
So question for you. How do you, if I press you to define a digital mortgage or a digital mortgage experience, how would you explain it?
If I was thinking, what a digital mortgage experience would be is, idealistically, I'd like to go onto a website, pick a product, click on it. Maybe I already have an account there. My digital footprint is already registered there, and clicking on that link would automatically provide maybe it's a financing token that can now be provided to the the entity that I'm going to buy from or that I'm refinancing through. And that would be my ideal version of what a digital mortgage would look like, right? That's like Amazon mortgage, right? That's what
Right.
that would be. But if I was just talking about what's available in market today, a digital mortgage is I go online, I plug my information in and what I'm looking for. I get a approval, not a pre-approval or anything like that, but I get an approval back and I go shopping. And that's what I believe is all that's out there right now. I don't think anybody's really tied the back and the front of the process together. And honestly, between compliance regulation being a moving target
Yeah.
um, and secondary market requirements being something that can adjust, I don't know that there'll ever be a truly end-to-end digital product.
That's an interesting perspective, man, because I hear so many C-suite guys like yourselves pushing the IT department to say, I've been told this is achievable and, I expect you to accomplish it. Now, they don't give them the specs for exactly what that means, but we were talking with a group the other day, this concept of push button get mortgage. I hear a lot of executives boil it down into putting pressure on their C-suite, which is where I'll tell you, we are having some conversations with some, I wouldn't call them new entrants into the lending market, but we're starting to see credit unions and small banks want to go deeper for balance sheet purposes and really, really maybe move off of their commercial or consumer platform into a true mortgage tech stack and grow and get into it for real. And one of the questions the executives have asked recently is like, man, I'm going to be putting in a system maybe for the first time, right? I'm actually going to go all in on mortgage. When I think about investing in my mortgage technology stack, how do I make sure I'm future-proofed that I don't install something that's going to be obsolete almost immediately? And so one of the questions that we're asking folks is, if you were the consultant and somebody asks you, man, what are the two or three things I got to make sure I invest in when I implement my technology stack to make sure that I'm really kind of future ready for where mortgage is going. So I don't wind up 2 years from now going, oh my God, I didn't install the right things. I'm way behind the curve.
I don't think that's possible, Henry. I mean, let me give you a real life example. Um, we've got some legislation out there in the US marketplace that says we'd like to focus on affordable housing and, we want to implement a handful of things to create new housing from a builder perspective, et cetera. Um, and there's, whether it's executive orders or whether it's proposed legislation or any of these things that are out there, that's like saying, hey, I like unicorns, because the reality is you need an entire infrastructure of regulatory people to make sure that that can be accomplished. And in today's marketplace, that doesn't exist, right? So you start thinking about 2 years from now, this year sometime, we're going to see some type of change in our political atmosphere, which will then lead to legislation being pushed to the side, some legislation being pushed forward. We don't know
Mhm.
exactly what that's going to look like. And depending upon what that ends up looking like, no matter what you build for today, you're going to have to make adjustments for a year and a half, 2 years from now because of those regulatory changes, because of those legislative changes, and they may be beneficial to the people, but that doesn't make it beneficial to us as mortgage lenders, as IMBs, as banks. It causes more work for us. Maybe good for people in the in the IT space or the infrastructure space or the people who create those things, keep some kind of job security in place. But the reality is it's continuously moving, and it's not always just moving forward. Sometimes legislation says, "Hey, maybe we made a mistake. Let's bring that back."
So what I'm hearing you say is almost like, hey man, I wouldn't get too overly concerned about, future ready trying to future retify your stack because you can't anticipate with these changes. Maybe it's more about being agile and iterative and just in time.
I agree with that 100%. I think you need to be agile. I think you need to be either the front runner or the immediate follower. That's my spot in line, right? Either I want to do it first and see if I break it, or I want somebody else to break it and then I'll go do it just a little bit differently than how they broke it, right? I think that's the right way, and it's quite possibly the only way for the time being.
Yeah. So, I mean, what are your thoughts about, and I don't want to name any names, that's not what we're here to do today, but as you know, the market is pretty dominated in mortgage lending by a few core tech systems and a few core tech conglomerates. They have most of the market share.
Sure.
And these same guys that are thinking about investing and starting to scale their mortgage operations, they'll often ask us which one of those is the best, and to what extent does what's out there today actually constrain our ability to be truly modern, truly digital, truly cutting edge? Like, which one do you recommend, and what are the constraints of the modern system? Because this is a conversation we have about build versus buy, which we'll talk about in a second. But based on your experience, you've touched a lot of different systems, I think, in your
Yeah.
career. Generally speaking, how do current market dominating systems constrain an organization from being really innovative or creative, do you think? Or do
Yeah,
they at all?
so well, they do, absolutely. There's definitely constraint on innovation when you are dealing with the bigger players in market. Think about it. If you want to play in any particular large market share holder from a LOS perspective or from a digital perspective, just technology in general, um, there may be fees that you as a third party innovator have to pay in order to utilize or be a part of that, that schema, that atmosphere, that group of providers. And unfortunately, that can constrain you as a person who is creating code that is bringing the next really cool tool to the masses. Um, so with what's out there right now, that one particular thing is actually the most bothersome to me. It's almost like you can be as innovative as you want, but you must also be prepared to be taxed for your innovation. And therefore, it actually almost holds you back from being able to grow at the rate you could have grown. I think a lot of the smaller players out there are better at allowing people who are creating to be able to bring their technology forward to help organizations move forward. I know you said you're going to talk about it later, but I am 100% in the camp of if you can get the investment together to do it, that you should build your own.
Interesting. Yeah. So that is the question that comes up, and you've done this successfully in your career, but as an executive that owns the business, how do you go, what goes through your decision-making process when you think about filling your tech needs with, well, I can just go buy SaaS and it'll be good enough for now versus, no, I'm actually going to create my own because I think I can create an advantage. How do you justify those decisions?
Well, that's getting harder and harder to justify. 10 years ago, it was easy to say, hey, let me take a look at three or four different vendors. Let me figure out who's got the best price. Let me figure out who's got the product that's going to best align with what I want to do. And I'm going to go with that, right? Today, as technology moves at the rate it moves, you can you can take on a vendor and then you can build whatever they provide you out in the AI sphere of the world, and then all of a sudden eliminate that vendor because you don't need them anymore. And now you've got a almost free version of what they provided to you. So I don't think those services or software as a service is going to be able to stay the same that they have for the last 10 years. I don't think many of them will see profitability the way they have for quite some time. There's going to be some niche software as a service providers that are going to survive and do really well, but there are things that are not going to do well. And here's a real good example. 10 years ago, I remember bringing on a vendor, a technology vendor for, an OCR piece that would then calculate income. Today, my enterprise LLM does that on its own. We programmed it to do it. We did really use the same source material, which is public source material, but we were able to replicate that, and then we terminated the vendor relationship.
Did you use an
So
existing LLM model, or did you use Google, or what was, do you mind if I ask how you got there?
yeah, so 5 years ago, I was really into what AI was going to be, what it was going to come of it. These days, I use three particular engines for everything, but our enterprise engine is technically ChatGPT. It's the paid for model that we, have firewalled and secured properly, so the teams here can use it without worrying about what data is getting thrown out into the public domain. Um, but if I had to give you some ideas on parts of the business, I love Perplexity in general because it encapsulates everything. I think ChatGPT is still number one when it comes to data and what I really need to be accurate. And then I like Claude right now for visuals. It's really good at like the marketing piece.
Right, right. Yep, no doubt about it. Somebody sent me today a output from a 4 hour meeting we had about a concept, and they told me in 8 minutes they created this beautiful 25-point slide, and I will say the slide shows better than my analysts could have put together for sure. Yeah, that was a little scary to my analysts, as you can imagine.
Yeah, that's
Um,
that's a tough part of the business right now is
so so when you
yeah.
did this LLM stuff internally, right? So do you host an internal technology team with the capability to do that? Do you partner with an outside firm that you trust, that you kind of use as a trusted vendor? How do you do it?
Yeah, we did both actually. So we have a third-party vendor who is outsourced onshore, so it's not a offshore any a provider. It's a U.S.-based company that assists us with the initial rollout, the build. And then we have two or three individuals here who are, I guess, just a little bit more tech savvy than the norm. And they've really been the key, the people who communicate back and forth with our external provider. But almost everything was built in-house. Now, the cool part is in about 3 or 4 more weeks, what we've built around one or two teams will be finished, or at least this iteration will be finished, and we'll be able to deploy that across all of our teams across the US. And
Yep.
that's going to be super beneficial to us. But that is also a constraint. When we do build something within the LLM, we have to build it based on something and someone. And so we have to build it first and then deploy it. So not everybody gets to experience it as we're kind of going through it.
And participate in the creation of it from a requirement standpoint.
Right.
Yeah. When you kind of a roll-up general question, when you think about places you've been where you've had internal tech staff versus external partnerships, um, any frustrations from your experience on the rate and pace of being able to build and deploy things with one model over the other? Um,
No, I have not had any issue with the rate or the time it takes to use one versus the other. Now, that's not a completely fair statement because it's only the ChatGPT model that we've been using to build with. The others are, used as needed, right? So like we use Claude, but we use Claude to create marketing and only marketing. Um, and the Perplexity engine is really just for me, right? I use that for newsletters, content, what I'm putting out to customers, the teams, and it draws from a number of sources. Another interesting thing, and I actually just learned this coming back from the New Jersey MBA conference. I heard a gentleman say this on stage. Um, if you're going to use Google, then stick to Gemini because it's particularly refined to be used within the Google platform. That was
right.
interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah, there's definitely some nuances there. So, when I would say the last 2 years, I've all of these conferences have had the same panel members talking about the same things about AI, and I would say 80% of it is intelligent document extraction, OCR. And what we have been doing is trying to get a conversation started about the end-to-end process from initial application received, disclosures, ordering services, pre-underwriting, document validation, clearing conditions, et cetera, et cetera. And what's interesting is we have been doing some focus groups with lenders, man. They all seem to have the same constraints and bottlenecks in the same places. And I would say they were the same constraints and bottlenecks that I saw, pre-AI discussions, even pre-RPA discussions. Do you see in your own process there at more, are there traditional areas where you still see bottlenecks you wish you could get rid of?
So no. In the last 5 years, the answer is no. Remember, I built this with a clean slate,
Right,
so I didn't have to undo anything. I get the bottlenecks, I get the restrictions because once you put something up, it's very hard to take it down.
right,
Just even from your previous question about LOSs or the technology that's out there, you can't move to a new LOS without completely agreeing to run parallel for X amount of time. You got to take on that cost. You got to think about what running two LOSs times the same number of seats times the same number of technology support staff and things that you need for both sides of that
right.
can cost and what it would entail. So, for me, I don't have bottlenecks right now. Does that mean I won't have some in the future? I don't know that. Um, are we staying as agile as possible so we don't need to have or that we don't run into or create bottlenecks? Yes, we are. Um, do I do I remember 100 bottlenecks from the previous 25 years? Absolutely. And those bottlenecks come from people more than they come from the technology itself. Uh, if you give somebody a tool to use and they don't trust the tool and you don't do the right level of change management with them, you don't give the right level of education for it, you're going to get pushback. And even when you get the handshake and the, okay, I'll do it, you're going to get the unseen pushback.
Right.
And that's going to be your major bottleneck. That it's difficult to do. I remember
An
having this
adoption issue,
conversation.
yeah.
Yeah, I remember having this conversation just recently where I said, the biggest bottleneck for most of the biggest players out there are that they're more worried about the reputational risk of laying off 500 people because they can and they don't need them anymore than it is about whether the technology works or not. It's,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. Wow. Why is that reputational risk such a big deal? I do hear a lot of lenders talking about uh, you put a business case in front of them, and the economics are really clear when it comes to not just technology, but sometimes fulfillment operations or both together. And like, but you know what? I don't want to let my folks go, and my salespeople will go berserk, and I will lose my salespeople if I lose these internal relationships, which makes me wonder, is that really important to the sales guys? I mean, you're a big sales organization. What do the sales guys want the most when it comes in terms of innovation and excellence? Is it loyalty and culture, like not letting people go, or do they want the fastest, most gee whiz bang stuff they can bring to market?
So my salespeople have really been coached into utilizing what works the best, what provides the best ROI, not the, hey, that's my best friend situation, or, we need five people to do this. No, we're showing you the tools that we have that'll make five people's job one job. Now let's pick the one best person out of the five and make sure that we can retain them. Um, the reputational risk factor is important for
Yeah,
bigger companies because when you do have 1,000 employees and now you only need 500, that's 500 voices out there that have to go home, tell their families that they got laid off. That's, let's just say each one of those 500 have four people in their house. That's 2,000 people running around your neck of the
yeah,
woods, wherever you're
yeah.
headquartered, saying that this company's terrible. They laid off my mom, my dad, my husband, my wife, whoever. And that may force somebody to say, I don't want to do business with
That you raise a really good point, man. And I've been struggling with this myself, but we all know this automation is coming. We can call it AI, synthetic intelligence, cognitive computing, whatever we want to call it. It is coming. And so it raises a question, can we repurpose folks that work within a mortgage operation today in traditional roles like opener, closer, processor, underwriter? Can we create a hybrid specialist role where man plus machine, they play a uniquely different role, and it's a much more sophisticated role where they're doing exception-based processing. But one of the questions is, can the industry pivot that fast? Are there enough people inside those operations that can do that, or are we just going to displace a whole group of frontline workers?
Well, the answer to all of those not questions is yes. Um, we have to just say, damn, without sounding like the biggest jerk in the world. Um,
It's
reality
hard.
is this: at some point or another, the courage has to be had to say this business no longer requires 20 people to do something. And, maybe we go the way of coal. Maybe we go the way of car manufacturing. Maybe we go the way of many other industries over the last 200 years. But that is a reality. As technology continues to advance, we have to take the best of the best, repurpose them for the jobs that need hands or need human interaction, and we need to, put the machine or the technology in place that helps to reduce the cost. Um, because at the end of the day, our industry is here to help people get into a new home or to finance their most
Right,
precious asset. It
right,
isn't to see how many jobs we can save.
right, right, right. Yeah, yeah. And as a CEO, you're in a unique position that, all your decisions influence those families, right?
Yeah,
Um,
that's exactly right.
it, is there is there somebody out there today that you would say, and if you don't want to name any names, that's fine, but people are asking, they say, well, Henry, if you're going to come in and build us a new tech stack and or create an operational capability, not just the tech stack, but the whole thing, I want to benchmark myself against who's best in class, right? And so they'll say things like, well, Rocket's got to be best, right? They got to be the greatest because, they see the marketing. Um, Other names come up from time to time, and sometimes I feel a little I haven't been in every shop in the country, but I've been in a lot of them, and I would say it's a wide bell curve. I don't see tremendous outlier differentiation in terms of quality, productivity, use of automation. A lot of shops look very similar. Do you have any perspective on somebody that's knocking it out of the park that you would say, man, if you're going to build, if I was building a mortgage operation, not my own, but if I was going to benchmark somebody else, who in the industry would you look at and say, they're on an amazing place?
That's a very difficult question to answer, right? I mean, yeah, sure. If you're looking at the Rockets of the world, those are large operations.
Yeah,
They function the way they do because they need to maintain that very large operation for the amount of manufacturing that they're doing in there, right? And they're
right.
manufacturing loans, and it's a large number. I don't have a company that I look at today and I say, that's the company that somebody else should model themselves after. Um, I believe that in today's marketplace, we need to be listening to what the consumer wants and what the staff really thinks is going to be useful to them. And then we need to build whatever that is. It's not hard to build anymore. I know nothing's going to come out perfect with all the AI tools that are out there, but that's why you have technologists that can say, "Hey, let's build it first, and then we'll refine it and make it the way we need to make it." And that super cost effective comparatively to going out there and getting the biggest loan operating system and the best credit services or the point of sales or et cetera, et cetera. I don't think any one company out here has the secret sauce on what's best. I don't believe it exists.
How do
I
you
think
how do you as a leader, so I mean I love hearing you say that because it's kind of inspiring to hear a leader talk that way because we see a lot of leaders who ask for our help and services, and they they've got a bit of an ultimatum being pointed towards their tech guys, like, don't make a mistake. What's the ROI? What's the IRR? What's the 3-year return on capital deployed? And the amount of hand wringing that goes into the upfront decision. And when you wind up not taking a lot of risks because you go with something that's going to look good from a business case standpoint. But it sounds like you're giving your people direction where you're giving them a little latitude to be creative and fail, and that's okay.
Yeah. So, I am going to say there is a inherent difference. Um, yeah, sure. Listen, I may at some point in the near future do $1 billion in volume, right? And for the last few years, I've been doing a few $100 million in volume. Um, so I'm small. I'm small fish in a gigantic pond. And so, yeah, I have a lot of latitude and leeway. I'm also a super lean organization. I don't have to worry about, a C-suite with 10 people in it that all have, $300,000 salaries and $1 million bonuses. I don't have to worry about that.
Right.
So, if we make a $50,000 error, am I gonna be mad about it? Yeah, I'll be down the street at a cigar bar, smoking one of those cigars and, you know, throwing ash at the person next to me because that'll make me feel better. But I don't know what it is. Like, hey, we tried, we didn't get there, and yeah, it was a big error. It's a lot of money, but um, what came out on the other side is exactly what we wanted, and that's okay. And I can continue to say that while we stay this small. Um, ask me again if I'm ever the size of Rocket, but that might be 25 years from now, and who knows?
Well, I know you've been around some deals where some major capital was deployed around developing mortgage technology
Sure.
in your past, and recently I've seen some money put together to support servicing platform, underwriting automation, and I'm surprised sometimes at how big the capital request is. So, for example, I recently saw prominent Silicon Valley set of investors put $250 million into um, what I would call really a thin slice solution. It's not an end-to-end platform, it's just part of the thing. And so I asked myself, what are you spending $250 million on? Which leads to a question of, if you had an unlimited budget from a Silicon Valley multi-billionaire, and he said, "Here's an open line of credit. Build the system of the future. You can build anything you want, but in 2 years, I want you to have something nobody else has." Any thoughts of how you would spend $200 million from a technology standpoint?
Yeah, I'd find some really good partners, like yourself, and like people that I know that are, very good on the technology side of the space. I'd find one really, really good like regulator. I'd pay some good salaries, but here's the reality. I agree with the first part of your comment. I can't figure out how $250 million is needed to do that because I'll tell you right now, somebody can give me $20 million and I'll achieve that same goal.
Interesting. And in your mind, you have a blueprint of what that is or what that would need to be? Because you've seen a lot of systems.
Yeah, I actually believe that in the long run here, I will eventually get to that space where I've built something similar to what I've had in my mind over the last 10, 15 years. And what has evolved in my mind over that same time period as new things come into play. Um, what would have cost us, you know, 10, 10, 20, $30 million to put together right now, and then I mean just in the last 2 to 3 years, we've seen technology advance far enough where you need far less people to do that same level of work. And here's reality. If a coder can cost whatever they cost, but let's just say they're a super high-end a coder, the most sought after person in our industry. I mean, even at that, what are we talking about? 300, 400 grand, maybe, maybe. Um, okay, that's for a year's worth of work.
Right. Right.
I can't figure out how $250 million is needed. Like, what are you paying for?
When I was at Movement Mortgage and their story, Movement, God bless Movement Mortgage, they actually originate more quote digital application online loans than Rocket does today. I mean, they've grown up. And the CEO there was not part of the industry before he got into the business, and so he asked logical, skeptical questions. And when I came in to be his chief information officer, I gave him a complete buffet of things that we could reinvest some of his capital into to be truly modern. And of course, focused on the customer, the kind of blend point of sale, digital experience, focused on the back end with e-closing and e-delivery and shoring up some of that. And then, of course, automation in the middle. And he said an interesting thing to me. He said, really, his number one focus is what can automation do for the people that bring in the business, which are loan officers and realtors. As
Yep.
far as the consumer was concerned, it's not that he discounted the importance to give the consumer a great experience, but in his order of priority, it was definitely the origination community, make it super easy for them to do business with us, then the consumer, and then frankly, the internal operators, the guys that actually have to, crank out and manufacture the work, they can have a basic set of utilities, and if it's harder for them to do the work, so be it. But that was his order of priorities. Pragma and I are currently having a lot of conversations with smaller institutions, and they're asking that question. They're like, okay, I only have $10. So I'm going to spread the $10 out. Should I spread it more on being the most digital consumer experience guy? Should I make it easier for my sales team and do some amazing things with like analytics and lead gen? Or should I get my cost to serve down to like peanuts because I'm going to automate everything with AI and agentic AI? And I say to them, it's a kind of a tough question, man. I don't think it's an either or, but if you force me to make a decision, I have an opinion. I'd love to know what yours is. If you could only pick one of those three things, the front, the lead gen and supporting the sales guy, or the back, which one would it be?
So that answer is really easy for me. Um, it's the middle of the process for me that I would spend my money on. I think still to this day, that's where the majority of the manual work gets done. But it's because of this. And I spoke while I was up in New Jersey on a panel. I gave this example, and this example I think is the reason that I believe this, or that I believe it's still the middle of the process that needs the most work. We continuously, because maybe social media does it to us, because maybe the industry wants us to push that way, we consistently are talking about how does AI help us in the front end of the process? How does all these technologies come into play at the front end of the process? How do we make it more digital for the people who are buying homes? Well, I think many people have it wrong on who's buying homes. Right now, we have what, maybe 60 something trillion dollars in wealth transfer over the next 15 years. And
Right.
everybody thinks that's because, your parents are going to pass and your kids are going to get some money. That's not true. Yeah, some of it is, but out of that 60 million, 44 trillion of it, trillion with a T, are going to widows, people who are still alive, whose husbands have predeceased them. That's where the wealth transfer is going for at least the next 12 to 15 years. Do you
Interesting.
think those people are on IG or a Facebook or a TikTok or YouTube or anywhere else? No, they're not. So I still
Interesting.
think that the manual book of business in somebody's pocket is still valuable, at least for the next 10 to 15 years. The next decade is still their space. The 50, 60, and 70-year-old loan officer will be serving the 70, 80, and 90-year-old widowed individual that now has two houses, a whole inheritance, and doesn't know how to leave it to her kids yet, and is going to be working with those people to do it. And so that's why I
Interesting.
don't think that it's the front end yet. I think the things we have in the front end, like AI for CRMs, the things we have in the back end, like the digital closing process, Ron, all that stuff, I think those are really great tools and they're there already. But I think the biggest challenge is the middle, because I think that the face to face, I know Mrs. Smith down the street relationship is still going to matter for 10 more years. And believe me, I'm a big digital proponent. I am not saying hey, we shouldn't. I'm just saying that we got to remember who that customer is. And if the customer is an 80-year-old lady, she's not doing it digitally.
Interesting, man. You're the first. I've not heard that before. That's a unique commentary on this, and I think and I agree. It's really insightful. If you, I want to ask you, as the owner operator of your own business, and as we came off of that ridiculous volume surge at the turn of the decade, and then we hit this kind of weird, just no inventory, higher rates, et cetera, and we're in this kind of quirky dynamic phase now. Man, what keeps you up at night? Like, what do you worry about as the owner of a mortgage company? Is it tech? Is it operations? Is it scaling? Like, what are you worrying about?
Yeah, my number one concern across my company right now is the scalability piece. Um, for us, it's interesting. There's lots of companies out there that are doing the kind of business that we've all seen and done for most of our careers, right? That's Fannie, Freddie, Ginnie business. I've been in the non-QM space on and off since 2000. And we do a lot more of that type of business. So right now, I have a draw for people. People want to come here. People are calling us versus previously I had to call them and I had to recruit them. Now I don't even feel like I'm recruiting anymore. I'm just trying to tell people stop calling me. I don't even have time to talk to you right now because there's too
Right.
many of you to talk to. And so you know, with that new volume coming in, with all these new people coming in, my biggest challenge is how do we make sure we stay as productive, keep the scalability metrics, in front of us, make sure that we're
Uh-huh.
adding the resources we need to continue to move that in the right direction. So that's what does it for me, man. There's nothing else that makes me worried. I don't think there's any other part of this industry right now that I'm sweating. Ask me again in 2 years when the administration changes and the CFPB comes back with baseball bats in their hands. But I have something else I got to worry about then.
We are gonna have a future series on regulatory, and I'm gonna beg you to come onto that because there's nobody more qualified to talk about that than you. That's for sure. But so I would say, man, in summary, first of all, thank you so much for doing this. We could chat with you. Your perspective is really fresh and it's authentic, and I appreciate it. Um, you know, what's where are we going? Are we going to turn a corner? Are we going to see another boom day, another, fresh horizon of high volume or more profitability? Or do you think we're going to stay in this sanguine kind of nobody quite knows until the political climate changes?
Yeah, I'm in the second camp there. I think, for the majority of us in this industry, it's going to be kind of flat for the foreseeable future. Uh, I think that this business is cyclical, and I don't believe that that's going to change. I just think that the cycle lengths have changed drastically. So yeah, we are going to see another boom period, but the second part of what you said is most important. I don't think we're going to see that until we kind of figure out what the midterm elections look like this year and what the market's reaction is to how that turnout, occurs.
Man, and on that note, that, that's that's a big unknown, my friend, right? That's a
Yes, it
big
is.
unknown.
Yes, it
And
is.
we live in some crazy times. Well, I can't thank you enough for doing this, man. Really, seriously.
Yeah,
I asked you on short notice and I really respect your opinion. We are going to do a regulatory compliance piece because we're also getting a ton of questions about, you know, hey, it looks like the CFPB has shut its doors. We don't see a lot of enforcement action, but then in the same breath, we're seeing the states take over in hyperdrive and decide, well, if there's no national air cover, we're going to have to do it at the state level. And then if all of a sudden we go back to a different administration, are they going to try to make up for lost ground, which is going to create some cost issues for people, right?
sure.
So that one, put that one on your calendar, pencil that one in
Yeah,
for
let me
10.
know. I'd love to come back and talk
Yeah.
about it. That's a great, great topic, and
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of avenues you could go down thinking about what's going to occur with the CFPB, if they'll ever get their teeth back, or if we'll have a whole new version of a governing regulatory body.
Maybe it'll be Claude.
Yeah, maybe it will be.
Well, brother, thank you so much. I wish you a great weekend and all success with your growth.
Thanks. Bye, guys.
Thanks, man.